Good morning to Dr. Kan and my dear classmates. Today our group is going to talk about reading to learn. Reading to learn is active reading, a process that involves much more than the mechanics of converting a set of letters into meaningful words. It's a process that you will use for gathering much of the new information. Now let's compare these two situations. You had a full day of class, and you reward yourself a workout. Then a friend of yours suggests a quick bet, and you get back to your room at around 8 p.m. And you jump right into the first paragraph. The second paragraph seems tougher. Suddenly you wake up and it's already 11 o'clock, 3 hours down the drain napping. And your book is staring at you at the beginning of the chapter. You have a break in your neck. Then come to the second situation. You schedule yourself for shorter periods of reading, and you spend a few minutes preparing what you are going to read, and then you get to read with pen and paper in your hand. And while reading, you take notes. At about 5:30, you have already finished your assignments. You reward yourself a workout and have a meal with your friends. And then you go to your room and review what you have read. So what's the difference between these two situations? Is active reading. Active reading is a set of strategies to engage with text-based materials with the purpose of increasing your understanding. Active reading also applies to and facilitates the other steps of the learning cycle. It's critical for preparing, capturing, and reviewing too. This is the learning cycle, which is talked about by last few groups. First is prepare, then absorb new ideas by listening, reading, and observing. Next is taking notes, and finally review. Are you ready for the big leagues? There are a lot of differences between reading in high school and reading in college. The first is material. In high school, we are assigned only a chapter or a few pages in a chapter. But now in college, we are usually assigned with a few chapters. The type of the material is really different. Usually in high school, we read textbooks, but now in college, we read textbooks, ancillary materials, and periodicals, online postings, and so on. Next is discussion. Usually in high school, teacher usually guide you and your classmates to discuss your reading assignment, and the teachers are a key part to evaluate how you learned. But in college, most instructors won't spend much time talking about the reading assignment. Next is the teachers. In high school, teachers hold the expectation to discuss the reading assignment in class. But in college, instructors expect you to read your assignment before class and understand all the material. And the lecture discussion and tests are all based on the expectation. Finally, is the time. You are expected to spend 2 or more additional hours in college between the 2 classes, and most of the time will be reading. But in high school, maybe you will just read half an hour. And here's a note. It may not always be clear on an instructor's syllabus, but a reading assignment is a must before your class. Then, how do you read to learn? Also the 4 steps. First, preparing to read. Think about some questions. Why your instructor choose this text for your reading assignment? Has the instructor said something about the author of the book? How does it match with the course syllabus? Next, develop a plan of attack. You should know which part should you browse through and which part you should pay special attention to. And be sure to know the context of your reading assignment. Next is open your text to the assigned pages. Look at the title of the chapter. Is it divided into sections? And what's the name of each section? And usually illustrations in books cost money, so chances are that authors and publishers think these parts are really important. Finally, use critical thinking skills. Here is anatomy of the textbook. As you can see, it divided the book into a few parts. So first is preface and our introduction. You can see its purpose and scope from this. Then is forward. It tells you why the work is significant by an expert in the field. Next is author profile. It tells what the author considers important. And then table of contents. It's an outline of the entire book. Next is chapter review. You can chapter preview. You can have a view of the whole book from this. Next is introduction. You can see the objectives and the key themes, and then applied practice elements, chapter summary, and review material. It's a good way for you to answer these review questions to yourself to check what you have learned. And finally, endnotes and bibliographies. This will be useful when you make future research. Before you read, first create a purpose or quest for your reading. Start by checking your attitude. If you feel unhappy to read these assignments, you will get into trouble. And then stock your determination by setting a reasonable time for you to finish this text, and think yourself more as an investigator. Next, take out your notebook. You can use Cornell method to make your notes. In the left column, you write your questions. Be sure to space them well. because you will write the notes to the questions in the right column. So use your critical thinking skill of questioning what the author is saying. Turn the title of each major section of the reading into a question and write it down in your left column of your notes. For example, if the section is the end of the Industrial Revolution, you may ask yourself, what caused the Industrial Revolution to an end? Next, in the left column, jot down any keywords that appear in boldface. Discover their definitions and the significance of each as you read. And there are also alternative approaches for you to prepare to read. You can also use the outline method, which you write headings and subheadings. And you can also use concept map method. You write the title in the center and write the section's title as branches. Now read. Start by taking a look at your notes. Reflect about what you already know about the subject. You may follow these tips while reading. First, look for answers to the questions you wrote, and then think about the relations among section titles, boldface words, and graphics. Pay particular attention to the first and last line of each. This can help you get the main idea of each section, and skim quickly over parts of the sections that are not related to the key questions. Then capture the key ideas while reading. Start by writing the answers to your questions in your notes in the right column. Also define the keywords you found in the reading. And then go back and reread the section with your highlighter or pencil to call out key ideas. And this will help you learn more efficiently. Don't be afraid to highlight. Highlighting can help make the book truly yours. Next, think critically before you highlight. No more than 10%. Too much or too less will equals to highlight nothing. Next, use your pencil also to make annotations in the margin. Use symbols. For example, you can use exclamation marks to stand for something really important, and use question marks to stand something you don't understand, and use TQ to stand for some questions that may appear in tests. And be especially alert to signals like according to or Jones argues. It shows that it's not the instructor's idea, but others' idea. Be sure to make notes when your instructors summarize others' position, and have a look at the critical, significant, and important implication. It represents that these views are really important. Finally, review what you read. First, you can ask yourself, what did you learn? And then you can summarize by yourself. Also, you can cover the questions you read before and answer the questions aloud. Here are some strategies for textbook reading. First, pace yourself. You can divide the reading tasks into smaller parts, and then schedule your reading. For shorter periods between classes. Next, get yourself in the right place. Absolutely, the library will be the best place for you to read. Then avoid distractions. Multitask won't help you. Don't listen to music when you study. Then avoid reading fatigue. You can read for about 15 minutes and then rest for about 5 to 10 minutes. And read your most difficult assignments early. It will help you refresh in the morning, and you will read more easily. Finally, make your reading interesting. Read as an investigator. Here are my questions. First, if the instructor mentioned the rules in course syllabus, we don't need to read before class. Of course, it's false. As long as you take out the book and pen, then you can read. It's false. You should schedule yourself. And while reading textbooks, you should not read what you are interested in. And instead, you should pace yourself, get yourself in the right place, and avoid distractions. That's my part. Let my partner introduce the next part.
Okay, good morning, Dr. Ken. Good morning, classmates. Now I will talk about how to deal with special text and how to improve our vocabulary. We will read a lot of text in our life. Since we were born, we are living in an information time. To get information, we need to read. Read books, read newspapers, read textbooks, read online books, and so on. But how to receive the most useful information? Different texts have different strategies to read. Mathematics book text, science text, social study text, primary source, and foreign language text, and online book. There are some kind of special text. Let's learn how to get the most of knowledge from those books. The mathematics text. As for reading this book, first, don't skip over special element. Every person who have learned math will know this is very important. If you skip a power 2, the final result will be far from the right answer. Second, read the formulas. Make sure to understand the meaning of all the factors. Know what alpha or beta means. Then, substitute actual numbers for the variable and work through the formula. This can make you much more understand the formulas. And the fourth, make formulas real by applying them to real-life situation. Do all exercise within the assigned text to make sure you understand the material. We Chinese students know this way very much. It's called 题海战术 in Chinese, which means the CO exercise will make you understand the knowledge much better. And don't go on to the next section until you have mastered the material in the current section. Only you have understand this section, and then you can understand the next section more easily. We all know the next section will include much things in this section. So if you can't understand this section well, you can even not understand the next section at all. And if you have some trouble to understand the books, you can seek help from the instructor or teaching assistant during office hours if you need. Then the science text. Posing hypotheses and then using experimental data to prove or disprove them. You can ask yourself, can the experiment or observation be repeated? Think critically about the hypothesis and the experiment used to prove or disprove them. Just like an example, the Priestley, he put the mice and a plant together to a closed closed place. Then he found the mice can be alive for a long time. But then another person in the house, he makes the same exercise, but he found the result is the mice can't live. The mice died quickly. The two persons did the same experience, but the results are different. Why? Because some little changes can affect the result. So they just do more experience, to think more, and then they found the photosynthesis. And you can think about why did these results occur? What kind of changes would affect the results? When you're reading these books, you can think critically like this, and then you can be the next Nobel Prize owner. And then the social studies. Social science texts, such as those for history, economic, and political science classes, also put your critical thinking skills into overdrive when you are reading this. To understand the authors of the document and his or her agenda for their intended audience. Just you ask yourself, do I agree with the argument? If I don't agree, why? And would someone with a different point of view dispute this argument? Just ask you some questions, and then you will understand better. And then the foreign language text. Reading text in a foreign language is particularly challenging, but it also provides you with invaluable practice and many new vocabulary words in your new language. To learn this text, the most important is don't rely on a dictionary or an online translator. A word-for-word translation doesn't always yield good results. For example, the ponytail. If the translate it into Chinese, it will be Ma Wei, the girl's hair. But when we translate it in English, it's her tail. So the best way to learn a new language, don't rely on a dictionary. You can practice, and then you practice a lot. You can understand better. You can understand what this means in the English, in a foreign language, not your mother tongue. Okay. There are some common uses of textbook graphics. The first one is table. This type of graphic often used to present raw data. To understand this kind of graphic, you should understand what is being measured, which data point stand out as very high or low. Think about why it's higher or lower. And the bar chart. It can compare quantity data or show changes in data over time. And the line chart, this can illustrate a trend in a series of data. And the illustration. This illustration can illustrate part of an item usually used to take note. This is a question. Tempted to skip over graphics material and focus only on the reading? The answer is no. And then I will talk about how to improve our vocabulary. To improve our vocabulary, we should start with a strong foundation of healthy word use. You can play a game with your friends. List some words you often say, but it's no use, which you may be using without thinking. Write those things on the paper, such as oh, well, you know, okay. Then just talk. Let your friends note how many times you said each word. then you can know how many times you speak those words, and you will be surprised at how often you use some of these words. And the following tips will help you gain and correct your small words. The first, you should prepare to improve your vocabulary, and then a strong foundation of healthy word use is just to involve using those okay, well, you know, just like this, and then be on the lookout for new words. You want to improve your vocabulary, you need to find out the word you don't know. Don't just skip it. And then write down the new words you don't know. Write down those in the paper. You can often see it, read it, remember it. And then infer the meaning of the word. Infer, don't just to search it on the internet, to translate it on the online translator. Look up then after you inferring the meaning of the word, look up the word in a dictionary. Write the word in a sentence, and then you can use this word more. You can during one that is relevant to you. And then say the word out loudly. You can say out, and then you can remember it more easily. Then use the word. If you can use the word, in fact you can remember it very well if you can use the word. And then schedule a weekly review. Review it often and you can remember it. The best way to build your vocabulary is to read, and a stronger vocabulary. This is the question. When you are reading a foreign language text, the best way to learn a new language is, the answer is C. Why? Because we can go, this is. The best way to learn a new language is practice. And then the second, the best way to build your vocabulary is, the answer is D for this. The best way to build your vocabulary is to read. And then, true or false? The answer is false, because write the word in a sentence is before say the word out. This is true, because a good vocabulary is essential for success in any role that involves communication. And then it's my partner to tell the last paragraph.
Okay, good morning, Dr. Ken and my classmates. Now, I will introduce the 4 important steps of reading. Before reading, the first step is preparing. We should prepare for reading by scanning the assignment and developing questions for which we want to discover answers through your reading. And when you are reading, the second step is discovering answers. We should read the material and discover the answers to your questions. Then, the third step is taking notes. We should capture the information by highlighting and annotating the text, as well as by taking effective notes. The final step is reviewing. We can review the reading by studying your notes, by integrating them with your class notes, and by discussing the reading with classmates. They are the 4 steps of reading. And let's go into the summary. What we should do in reading. The first, as I mentioned above, before you read, learn as much as you can about the author and his or her reason for writing the text. What's his or her area of expertise? Why did the instructor select this text? We can find it's preparing. And when scanning a reading, look for clues to what might be important. Read the section titles, study illustrations, and look for keywords and bold-faced text. It's the step discovering answers. And then, don't highlighting your text until you have read a section completely to be sure you understand the context. Then go back and highlight and annotate your text during a second read-through. This is the third step. And the final, think critically about what you are reading. Do you agree with what the author is saying? How does it relate to the rest of materials in the course? What does this new material mean to you in real life? This is the reviewing step. And if we face special texts and situations, for example, if we want to read the math textbooks, we should do the all exercises and apply the formulas to real-world situations. And almost all books have illustrations. We should practice reading the illustrations. Each type of graphic material has its own strength or purpose. Then, if we face the science text, look for statements of hypotheses and experimental design when reading it. And if we want to read the history, economics, and political science texts, they are heavily influenced by interpretation. Think critically about what you are reading. Then, if we want to work with foreign language texts, it requires more time and more frequent breaks. Don't rely on word-for-word translations. If you need to read with children around, don't put off your reading until you have a large block of time. Learn to read in short periods as available. And the source of the material is very important. When reading on the internet, be extra diligent to evaluate the source of the material to decide how reliable that source may be. And if English is your second language, seek out the resources that may be offered on campus. In any case, be patient with the process of mastering college-level English, and always remember this. What feels like a disadvantage in one situation can be a great gift in another situation. And the vocabulary is very important. When you want to encounter a new word, we should follow these steps. The first, write it down and write down the sentence in which it was used. Second, infer its meaning based on the context and the word roots. Third, look it up in a dictionary. Fourth, write your own sentence using the word. Fifth, say the word, its definition, and your sentence out loud. Sixth, find an opportunity to use the word within 2 days. And there are two questions. The first, what's the 4 steps in reading? And the answer is preparing, discovering your answers, taking notes, reviewing. And the second question is, what's important when we are scanning a reading? And the answer is, when scanning a reading, look for clues to what might be important. Okay, this is our group's presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I want to go ahead today and start off by reviewing just a little bit of the last habit, habit 6. That was to synergize. We were a little bit short on time last week. What I'd like to do, I think where to do it. I guess we can do it up here. I need 4 volunteers. Probably all young men. I get 4 people to come on up. Okay, the first thing I want you to do is show us how strong you are. And I want you to go like this, about as much of a 90-degree angle here and 90-degree angle here as you can, and see how long you can do that. Make it as 90-degree angle as you can. Okay. Well, that's not very 90-degree there. A little more 90-degree. More like this. Kind of hard, isn't it? If you were really doing 90 degrees, do you think you could do that very long? If you were really straight legs and straight back, it's almost hard to hold your position, let alone stay there very long. The most of you are kind of cheating. That's nowhere close to 90 degrees. If you're 90 degrees, you wouldn't be there very long. But maybe we can solve that problem. Okay, I want you to take a look at this. I want you to do this. You understand what you're doing? So your shoulders will be on each other's knees, and you're going to form a square. You understand? You see what you're doing? Okay, so each one of you, so form a square. Each shoulders will be on somebody else's knees. Okay, let's do it. You see how to do it? This is what they're challenged to do here. So your shoulders or neck is on somebody else's knees. And then their knees and theirs on yours, and you form a square. You have to start off with a hand down to get there. Put a hand down first. Maybe I need help a little bit here. Okay. So you have to start off with the hand down. Go ahead and start like this. And then once you're in place, you have to get more of your shoulders on the knees. Okay, well, before they couldn't, it's very hard to do something like that without help from somebody else. That makes an example of synergy. If we work together, we accomplish stuff that we can't do separately. As I said, if you were truly at this angle, let alone like that, but even if you're like this, you can't hold that. Your muscles aren't good, thank you. Your muscles aren't strong enough to do that. But here they went even further, all the way back, and together they can do it. Synergy is kind of like that. We can do what we cannot do separately. Now, there's in seeking synergy, there's 3 elements to consider: mental, emotional, psychological. Mental, sometimes we can understand that when we talk about brainstorming. So as you get together and you start throwing out ideas, the key to brainstorming is not to be overly critical. It maybe add some constructive ideas, but not
not be really critical of somebody else's ideas, but maybe offer improvements to their ideas. Make it feel safe so that people can contribute their ideas and not feel like they're going to be put down or ridiculed or anything like that. And in that sort of environment, then you get you get one idea, and then somebody says, oh yeah, well how if we did it this way and improved it a little bit? Oh yeah, well what if we did this way and we improved it a little bit? I think I may have told you, but many years ago, about getting close to 25 years ago, I was elected to city council in my city in America. And before I was elected, almost every day it seemed like there was a story in the newspaper about how dysfunctional the city council was. They were arguing with each other all the time, yelling at each other, threatening each other. It was really ridiculous. They weren't getting anything done. They also, I think I already mentioned my experience with being appointed after that to be the liaison with the library district. And they had a terrible relationship with them. They had a terrible relationship with everybody. They were fighting with everybody, including each other. And so after I was elected, even before I was sworn in, I talked to them and said, look, I think we really need to go do some brainstorming. We need to decide what is it that we're all about. What do we want to accomplish in the next 4 years? And so we did. They rented some hotel rooms in a city about, I don't know, just about an hour away or something. Not very far away, but they wanted to get away from the relatives and wanted us to all kind of turn off our phones and concentrate on what we were, on our mission, and our purpose and our goals for the next 4 years. And so we did that. And once we did that, the attitude in the city council totally changed. We still didn't always agree with everything. There were still disputes, but there was more in common than there was difference then. We now, after we threw out all the ideas, we actually created a list of almost 100 ideas of things that we'd like to accomplish. And then we voted on prioritizing them. And so everybody felt like they contributed to the overall. We didn't throw anybody's out unless they chose to throw it out. But rather, we just prioritize. What do we want to accomplish first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and so forth. And so, as I said, even though at times certainly we didn't always vote the same, we were not unanimous in all of our voting in the next 4 years or anything like that, we were not intolerant of each other. We could speak rationally and unemotionally because we were all part of this process. And what was interesting was that this list, they apparently just kept this list because they were still pretty much going down that list even more than 10 years after I left city council. They were still seemingly using that same list. And so that's, one of the mental advantage, you might say, of synergy is using brainstorming to get the strengths of everybody's perspective and build on each other's ideas until and in the process feel like you were all contributors and that everybody's voice was listened to, everybody's voice was heard. And that was anyway. So that everything turned out quite harmonious after that. Part of it is that we all think differently. We all have different mental resources. I've talked before about the different types of intelligences that they found. That some people have are very intelligent, perhaps in mathematical areas. Somebody else isn't strong there, but they may have music seems to be a totally different intelligence. We've all seen videos of kids that are 3 or 4 years old playing the piano like they were 50 years old, had a 50-year career or something. They're incredible. They obviously have something innate in their mind that allows them to do that. Other kids, they're kids under 5. They're doing calculus. It's It's amazing, and the guy who built this idea of multiple intelligences, that's how he did it, was looking at child geniuses and figured, okay, if this kid can do this when he's 3 years old or 4 years old, there must be something very distinctive about the brain that allows him to do that. And then, and other kids did this, and other kids did this. And so he's not sure how many intelligences there are, but he talks about maybe 8, but in his writings he says that there may be 13, maybe more, distinct intelligences in our brain. So with that, I think I've told you before, I actually think there's two sides to that coin. Some people have natural intelligence in certain areas, and probably all of us are retarded in some areas. In other words, there's some areas that we're really stupid at, that we're not very talented at. And even somebody who's a genius, that we consider a genius in one area, probably has some areas where they are not. Where, like I said, they may be way below everybody else. I don't know that there's anybody who could or has been ever seen to be a genius in all areas. Social intelligence, we talked about that. My brother has that, definitely. Got terrible grades, dropped out of university, but he has great social intelligence and is now very wealthy. He told me when I was at home in September that that year he had paid $1 million in taxes to the guy, in income taxes. So if he's paying $1 million in income taxes, that means he's making a lot of money. I don't even know what he's worth, but a lot. But also in the process of doing something like brainstorming, there's also an emotional. The second bullet here is appreciation of resources available through interaction with others. That's more of an emotional thing. That's not, it's intellectual. Intellectually, you can think about the multiple intelligence aspect. And you can think about people of different training. And that's kind of a cerebro-logical perspective on it. But you also need to feel it emotionally. You also, in order for it to be effective, you have to feel and appreciate and value the differences, as Dr. Covey has talked about. In one of his videos, he said, if somebody disagrees with you, celebrate. Because that means they have a different perspective that can strengthen yours. And together you can come up with a new idea. If everybody agrees with you, you have nothing to grow from. You need people to disagree with you and celebrate it. Don't resent it. Don't feel attacked by it. Although, again, there are ways to do it so that obviously the person who disagrees with you, if they have a good attitude, if they are appreciating that your perspective as well, then emotionally you have something that you can work with that is positive. We saw in the one on the right, we saw something like this the other day. One on the left we haven't seen yet. What do you see? What's the first picture here on the left? What is that a picture of? A duck? You may see something other than a duck? Rabbit? Yeah, it's a picture of a rabbit too. Anybody see both of them? How many can see both the rabbit and the duck? Okay, so not very many of you can see both the rabbit and the duck. I had to look up the answer. I'd seen this before and I forgot what it was. I immediately saw the duck. I could not see the rabbit until I had to try pretty hard. With the rabbit, this is the eye and these are the ears. So the mouth would be over here if you're seeing the duck. The duck, obviously, this is the beak. That's the eye of the duck, and the beak is out that way. So our very perception, sometimes we perceive things totally differently. As I said, the one on the right is a little bit more. How many immediately saw the old woman there? How many immediately saw the old woman? How many immediately saw the young woman? So most of you saw the young woman, but you see the old woman too, right? We saw a different variation of this earlier in the semester. But with the old woman, again, this is her mouth, this is her nose, this is her eye. We have the old woman and we have the young woman. With the young woman, this is like a brooch around her neck, this is her chin, this is her nose, that's her ear. You can't really see her eye. But anyway, again, we can look at something and see it totally differently. And that's true not just with pictures, but with ideas, with concepts. And so if we're brainstorming, as we were talking about before, if we're brainstorming what we want to accomplish, how we want to accomplish it, so forth, we can see things differently. And if we feel safe to share our ideas, then we can build on each other's ideas with, again, it's okay to say, yeah, I like your idea, maybe we could do this. And, oh, yeah, I like that, why don't we do this? And you build on each other's ideas. You don't just outright accept. That isn't constructive. But you can build, and do something that's much better than you could do separately, as our young men demonstrated. Psychologically also, this is part of seek first to understand and then be understood, but you have to apply that into the synergistic setting, into the brainstorming, into and brainstorming doesn't have to be a formal setting. It can be just the way your company works. If everybody feels safe to offer their ideas, and those ideas are discussed seriously, and there's some sort of a forum to build on them, you could do it electronically. You could, some companies like, I think HP has basically their own version of Facebook, so to speak. It's not really Facebook, but they use the social media software, in essence, to maintain a conversation throughout the company to build on each other's ideas. So Hewlett-Packard, HP does that. There are other companies that do similar things. So you can actually brainstorm in an electronic way and do it always. Have an ongoing brainstorm forever. Just building on each other's ideas indefinitely and coming up with new ideas to improve your company. So, that's part of it. The psychological aspect is it helps people feel safe, and it helps people to become involved within the conversation. So you can create an entire environment of synergy, as I said, is what HP is doing with their social media. Okay, so let's go to the last habit is take time to sharpen your saw. We referred to this a little bit. I think I'll go ahead and let Dr. Covey talk about it a little bit here, and then we'll go on to some additional discussion. Okay, I'll put this in Google separately, so I'm not going to record this portion. I've got my doesn't matter. So as I said, he's actually in those days from the far western part of the United States, and so he had built log cabins and so forth as from a child up, done a lot of wood cutting. So if anybody knew about sharpening a saw, it was Abraham Lincoln. He was, very much an outdoorsman. There are, different saws, you might say, that we need to think about, and they've referred to this already a little bit. But there's the physical dimension. That means exercising, trying to keep in. It doesn't mean you have to be slim. I'm not slim, but having energy is important. So the more exercise you do, even if you can't slim down as nicely as many of you are, you can still do enough physical work to have energy. You can still get enough sleep so that you're not sleepy. Right now I'm trying to finish a couple of chapters from a book for a book that's going to be published next year. And if I don't get enough sleep at night, I just can't do that. You can't do that as students. You can't focus on what your teacher's saying. You can't remember what you're reading and so forth if you haven't had enough rest. I'm kind of fighting that right now with my son, that is a foundation student here, as he keeps really odd hours, and I think it hurt his grades this last semester because he maybe sleeps 4 hours and then he gets up and goes to class, and then he comes back and sleeps in the afternoon. Our bodies aren't made to do it that way. That's not what we should be doing. And so I think he's sleepy a lot of the time. Spiritual dimension. This would have different meanings to different people as to whether you even believe that there is a spirit aspect to our bodies and to our soul, to our person. You may not, but there's still something, a consciousness that Dr. Covey talks about. That, for example, that I've mentioned, other animals don't have a self-awareness that other animals don't have. And you could call that a spiritual dimension, the fact that we are able to look at ourselves, even argue with ourselves in a way. I argue with myself all the time. I imagine you do too. So it's almost like having a little bit of a split personality when you're arguing with yourself. We've been talking about brainstorming. I love to brainstorm by myself. I can come up with different ideas and build on my own ideas. Oh yeah, what if I did that? Oh yeah, okay, I could do that and this and build on my own ideas. Because I'm internally arguing with myself and trying to innovate one idea on top of another idea. You might call that a spiritual dimension. I might interpret that differently, and Dr. Covey might interpret that differently than you might. But there's something there, a self-consciousness, self-awareness, a conscience, whatever you want to call it, inside that needs tending as well. Some people, Krishna in our department, likes to do yoga. And I would say that's his spiritual dimension. It helps the mind as well, I think. And I do something similar. I don't always do it consistently, and I know I should do it consistently. If I spend time doing that, you can call it whatever, you can call it meditation, you can call it self-brainstorming, you can call it prayer, you can call it yoga, whatever you want to call it, if you spend that time, you can gain inspiration and insights that go beyond just mental, than just your brain power. You come up with new ideas, new inspiration that you wouldn't have had before. I think I mentioned earlier in the class, in this course, that I think it's important for people to be bored. So in a way, when you're meditating, you're boring yourself. If you're kind of cutting off all of your thoughts about what you had to do today, and you're trying to get those out of the way. Sometimes you have to do something special to do that. Some of my greatest inspiration has been walking in the mountains, and I don't get that inspiration until I've walked for quite a while. I might go out for 8 hours, and the inspiration doesn't come until the 8th hour. And so sometimes you have to isolate yourself. For your greatest inspiration, you may have to isolate yourself the most. And you may have to put yourself in a position of being bored. And at first, you'll have a hard time emptying your mind from your daily cares. That's why it might take 8 hours. That you have to empty out your mind and think about other stuff. As I'm walking in the mountains, seeking that inspiration, and I'm appreciating the singing of the birds, and I appreciate the beauty of the forest or whatever, and then I'm emptying out those daily cares, replacing it with something more, something different that is more attractive to inspiration. And then ultimately you have those aha experiences that help give you guidance for your entire life. And so when we talk about that second habit of Dr. Covey's, begin with the end in mind, that is built into this idea of your spiritual dimension, is what do you feel inspired about? He has a book called The Eighth Habit, which is basically how to go from effective to great. And his point in the eighth habit, that's not part of this book, is basically follow your passion. Pursue your passion. And that passion comes, I think, from the spiritual dimension, where you finally say, this is what my life is all about. This is what I would die for. This is something that has transcendent meaning to me, that I will invest my life into. And if I'm pursuing this, I will feel like my life has been well spent. And so the spiritual dimension is approached in different ways. Everybody has to find their own way and how to pursue that inspiration. But, one piece of inspiration can be worth years of struggle, years of work. That one piece of inspiration that suddenly puts you in the place where, or heads you in the right direction, where you can achieve greatness, where you can feel passion, where you can devote your life, is worth more than, like I said, more than years of hard work if you don't know what you're working for. And so the spiritual dimension is very important. The mental dimension, likewise, different than the spiritual, but also extremely important. I most associate the mental dimension with lifelong learning. But again, I'm thinking about my son a little bit too much. But I remembered I was going to share with him a story. I think it was Socrates. Some of you probably heard the story. But a young man came to Socrates, I think it was, and asked to be his disciple, asked to learn from Socrates. And so Socrates took him out to the river nearby, or the lake. I don't remember all the details, but took him out to, we'll say, the lake. And they knelt down by the lake, and then suddenly Socrates grabbed him by the neck and pushed his head into the water. And the young man struggled and struggled, thinking he was going to drown him. And finally, he let him up. And why'd you do that for? Why'd you do that? And Socrates told him, when you want to learn as badly as you wanted to breathe, then you're ready. I wrote something like that when I was working with the migrant students. As I said, the migrant students in America are the most likely to fail in American school system. They don't know the language very well. They're coming from poor families. Their families are moving all the time. By definition, that what makes them migrant. They don't build strong relationships with friends, with teachers, with anybody in the community. Sometimes they're living in a car. If not in a car, in a rundown building of some sort, unlikely to have a computer. Might have if they become more prosperous, they might get a mobile phone. But typically they don't have much. And they don't have much opportunity. And so many of them fail. And so in my work with the state of Washington, I included a lot of time with the student leadership program. I think I mentioned, in fact, what we did here in front was from that. It was actually a lesson I developed for the student leadership program for the migrant students, to teach the students, to help them first off believe in themselves and see how they could set stair-step stones, not leaping to success, but take stair-step stones and move forward gradually until they could achieve success. Involving frequently university work and so forth. And I got to know many young migrant students who overcame all of their challenges to achieve a college degree and to become very successful in their later life. So it was very rewarding to me to see that transition, see that miracle occurring in their lives. But it was part of that. What I started to say is what I wrote was something I don't have the exact words, but it was something to the fact that the value of the student leadership program was that when people don't want to learn, you cannot force them. When they hunger and to hunger to learn in order to accomplish their own goals, you can't stop them. Especially at all times in history, now that we have the internet and so forth, that is true. If somebody really wants to learn, you can no longer stop them. It might have been possible, 100 years ago, but not now. Not now, for sure. But the question is, are you hungry to learn? And that's the question I'm asking my stepson. Are you hungry to learn? If I pushed your head into the lake out here, or into the swimming pool, and held you down for a minute or so, are you that desperation to wanting to breathe? Can you feel that desperate to learn? If you do, you will be successful. And that's part of lifelong learning. Your degree here is only a small piece of what you need to understand. My heavens, thinking back to all the things I learned after my degrees, one of the areas, for example, in enhancing your abilities to do stuff is computer. And that's what I think probably enhanced my career more than anything. Becoming one of the first people that knew how to create print publications electronically with desktop publishing. Even now, I'm the only person in our department that knows desktop publishing. In the last university I was at, I was the only one that knew desktop publishing. It is a very foundational program in the publishing business, but most professors don't know it. And yet it's pivotal for students to be becoming successful in the publishing or journalistic world. But I learned that 1986, no, 87. Well, 86 I started learning it. So that was, how many years? Let's see, 97, 07, so it's 30 years ago was when I started learning desktop publishing. About that same time, I had because I was working full-time at a newspaper, but I was working part-time running a local college journalism program. I also was able to take free classes. So I don't even know why I did, but I took a database program. About 4 years later or so, 5 years later, I took my first job in marketing. And knowing database, not in this day and age, but starting about when I took my first marketing job, databases are one of the most important things in marketing. In fact, I was just reading just yesterday that a lot of marketing teams are being recreated and including now IT specialists and database specialists because it's so important in personalizing your messaging to your audience and helping them to feel like they, like when you go to Amazon, they know what you've looked at before. And so they can suggest books that you might like now. Or they can address you individually with different suggestions, different ideas, and so forth. They can send you an email with your name in it and talk about, talk with you as if they knew you, which is all based on database. And so databases I used it in ways I won't go into detail right now, but I used it in ways that put me way ahead of the competition, way ahead of them. It saved me lots of times, allowed me to use mail merge to put out 200 letters in the time it took them to put out one marketing letter. So databases became very important to me. I got into, I didn't realize how quickly it was after the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web, I think they said was, the first browser was in 1993. By 1996, I was creating web pages. 1995, I was teaching how to use browsers and email and all that stuff because people didn't know how to do it yet. 1994, I was already into computer-based education and then as I proceeded, started creating my own computer-based education with multimedia, with video and so forth. All of those, I had no experience in my college with that. I didn't have, as far as my degrees went. None of my degrees covered any of that. My point isn't to brag. My point is, how much more effective was I by learning all the computer programs I've learned over the years? Whereas, here I am closing in at 70 years old, and at the former university, I was their distance education coordinator. I was the person that they'd come to when they had to know about technology, because, and despite my age. You can keep up with it. It's hard. It's hard for anybody to keep up with it. In fact, there was a survey done of marketing executives, and most of marketing executives right now feel exasperated because they're being asked to do stuff that they were never trained to do and they were never hired to do. But now with the evolving internet-based marketing and stuff, they're being demanded that they have to do this. And in fact, they're now going into they're in top leadership positions. They're asking them to help give their insights in order to make major company decisions. And yet they themselves are struggling with the technology. Many of them have tried to hire young people to do that, to come in and help them with the new technology. But just because you know how to use a mobile phone doesn't mean you know how to do marketing to mobile phones. And so about half of them more than half of them who have tried to hire people to come help them with new technology-based marketing can't find anybody. So even college graduates are not getting it yet. The book that I'm writing right now is about online marketing. And so I'm trying to stay on top of it. It's a lot of hard work to try to stay on top of it because it's moving so quickly. It's a moving target. One of the things I mentioned in this chapter I'm working on right now is there's a online publication called Social Media Examiner, and they just listed the new changes that the social media have made just in the last couple of months. And there were like 20 changes. Like Twitter doubled its character lengths. They've added more. Added some advertising tools so you can analyze how your advertising is doing and on the fly change your advertising without having to go through the company and so forth. Same thing with Facebook. They're making some major changes in their advertising. So like 20 changes in the last 2 months, and these marketers are saying, we can't keep up with it. But there's no young people to help them either that know how to do it. So it's demanding. My point is that if you are willing to work and willing to keep being a lifelong learner, you can give yourself skills that put you ahead of everybody else. Whereas that person that may have gotten better grades than you at the university, if they're not keeping up, they're going to be left behind. It doesn't matter how good a grade GPA they have in the university. If they're not doing very focused and energetic lifelong learning, they're gonna be in the back of the pack. They're gonna be like F students by the time within just a few years, because things are changing so quickly. Social dimension, social relationships are critical, as Dr. Covey pointed out. Those habits 4, 5, and 6 are all about social relationships. And according to him, interpersonal relationships, social relationships, are where the greatest successes are achieved. And so if you're not working on your social skills, if you're not, basically Dr. Covey's book fits into a lot of these areas. If you're doing the stuff that he's suggesting you should be doing, you should be growing in all these areas, and it should be a daily effort. That's one of the things he points out, is this is not just an occasional, I'm going to crash course my physical dimension. I'm going to work really hard one day, I'm going to exercise all day long, and I'm going to goof off the rest of the week. Well, that doesn't work. You all know that doesn't work. And that doesn't work also with the spiritual, mental, and social dimensions. You can't just crash it, one day a week or one day a month or whatever that you think you might want to do that accommodates you better. It has to be a fairly consistent effort to keep that saw sharpened, like the logger that won that competition. But he stopped every hour to relax a little bit and to sharpen his saw, keep things sharp. And, beating the young man who worked harder, put more effort into it, put more calories and energy into it, but he didn't put wisdom into it. He didn't take the time to refresh himself and didn't sharpen his saw. So we need to sharpen our saws. We have 4 dimensions of this saw, you might say. This is also where we talked a little bit about the PPC problem earlier in the semester. P being production and PC being production capability. One of the, I don't know if we talked about it in class, but one of the things he talked about in his book was that if you can imagine a manager, a company manager, not the top manager, but somebody in the lower ranks of management, doing something with the company that they required. Everything was built, I'll go to my own industry, the printing presses. You have this big printing press, and you have lots of backlog of work. And so this manager comes in and says, we're going to run that thing day and night to get all this work done. We can make lots of money. And so he comes in and he works that machine day and night, days after days, months after months, puts out all this printing product. His superiors, the CEO, thinks he's amazing. You're amazing. He gets all sorts of praise for it. And then he gets promoted. And the next guy comes in and becomes manager of the print shop, and the printer breaks down. The press breaks down. What he actually accomplished was devastating to the company. Because now you might be talking about a press of that size might be $20, $30, $40 million. And you haven't been taking care of it. That's devastating. And so we're kind of like that. We have a PPC problem. We want production, but if we don't work on if we don't do maintenance, if we don't do the things we need to do for production capability, we'll we ultimately will undermine the production. Ultimately, somebody will come along, like I say, the press breaks down, you have nothing anymore. You've got a $40 million bill and a press that doesn't work. That kind of more or less happened to the newspaper I used to work at, the daily newspaper. So now they're sending all their work to another newspaper. They didn't even buy another press because of the change in the internet and so forth. They're saying, we're not going to buy one. So they're paying another company, another newspaper competitor to do their printing for them because their press broke down and they decided it wasn't worth millions of dollars to fix it. And so they don't. So in essence, now they're paying their competitor to do their printing for them. So that's a real life situation. That's a reality. If you don't maintain your production capability, then you can't maintain your production. Dr. Covey talks about doing the same thing with a lawnmower. They don't really use lawnmowers here. They're using what they call them, weed eaters, I guess we call them in America, to trim all the grass out here. But whatever machine you're using to cut the grass, lawnmower is a little more complicated than a weed eater. But I've done it exactly what Dr. Covey said, that he bought a lawnmower. He didn't sharpen the blade ever. He didn't watch the oil that much. And after a couple of years, it broke down. He had to buy a new lawnmower. What he should have been doing was taking care of his lawnmower. Instead, after a couple of years, he had to spend another couple $100 for a new lawnmower. I've done exactly the same thing. I've gone through quite a few lawnmowers. In America, we like nice, beautiful lawns, and so everybody owns a lawnmower to take care of the lawn. If you don't take care of it, then you'll be buying a new lawnmower. That's not very smart. But just like Dr. Covey, I've been in the position where I just didn't have time. Didn't have time to take care of my lawnmower. And so it broke down, and we had to start over again, buy a new one. So the bottom line is PPC is all about, the 7 habits is all about PPC, how to maintain our production capability. If you don't, you can't be productive. You just can't be productive. Okay, so we've gone through all 7 habits. To be proactive, to accept the responsibility for our lives, that we can be what we want to be, that we can achieve. I don't go so far as to say you can achieve anything that you want to in life. Well, that's baloney. You can't achieve anything. I doubt that no matter how hard I worked, I would have been a professional football player. Even though sometimes as a kid I imagined that, American football, I loved that game. But you see, I'm not a professional football player. I doubt. There's only a very small fraction of the population in America of very active, strong, amazing athletes that can do that. They get paid millions of dollars to do it. Is it realistic do I really think if I went back and at age 5 started developing my skills that I necessarily would have been a professional football player? Maybe not. In fact, a lot of them that do have excellent skills end up being injured before they ever have their chance. Some of the best football players in American colleges don't make it in the professionals. And now you have bigger, faster, stronger competition, and what you were able to accomplish, you were able to accomplish amazing things at university competition you can't do in professional competition. And so I was looking at they have there a Heisman Trophy that's for the best college football player in American football. And I was looking down the list of the last 10 winners, and about half of them had no significant professional career at all. And this was the best. The person voted the best college football player couldn't make it in the professionals. So realistically, no. You can't do absolutely anything, but you can do amazing things. You can analyze your life, analyze your capabilities, work on them. And I can say this, there have been times I've accomplished more than I thought I could possibly accomplish. I can definitely say that by shooting at the stars, I maybe landed on the moon or whatever. It is possible to do more than you even think you can do if you set your goals high enough and work hard enough at them. That I do believe. I absolutely know that. We talked about I think we talked about it in response to the being proactive, although there's more to it than that, about that Johnny the bagger, the kid that just bagged groceries, and how he changed an entire company by deciding that he was going to be proactive, that he was going to write the little thoughts for the day and put them in the grocery bags. And though Johnny was mentally deficient, you might say, he's never going to be the manager of that company, but he totally changed the company by just deciding he was going to do something that would help people build memories about in their visit to his store. And then suddenly people started coming to the store, flooding to the store to get Johnny's thought for the day, because they thought he was such a nice young man, and it's so thoughtful for him to do that. And then other people in the store started doing similar things, like giving flowers to old ladies and so forth. And that supermarket became, one of the top supermarkets in the area because of Johnny, the retarded kid. So can you, if you're proactive, Dr. Covey said, if you recall, that somebody's proactive can be 5,000% more effective than somebody who's not proactive. And as I said earlier in the semester, I doubted that at first. When I first read that, I thought, that's crazy. And the more I thought about it, I thought of Johnny. I thought of people like that. I thought, no, it's true. It absolutely is true. Somebody who's proactive, who absolutely believes they can change the world and works actively at it, at least their little piece of the world, to use their influence to make things better, like Johnny, can absolutely have 5,000% more positive impact than somebody who's much more intelligent, but doesn't believe they can, doesn't exercise their proactivity to make the world a better place. Then Johnny is better. Then Johnny is 5,000% better than them, and he's retarded. So proactivity, begin with the end in mind. As I said earlier, what are you passionate about? What is it you're living for? What are you willing to die for? What is it you're willing to work for? That you're reading about? That you're willing to that you're willing to pursue, even if you weren't paid? What is it? What is your passion? And can you make a living from it? That's basically, again, the 8th habit. You figure out what your passion is and figure out how to make a living from it. And you'll change the world if you're passionate, if you follow your passion. Putting first things first is a matter, again, of self-organization. How do I spend my time? Am I wasting it? There might be a small difference between habit 7, sharpen the saw, and sitting around and watching TV all the time. I mean, in the sense, it's you might even be watching TV when you're sharpening the saw. You might be watching something specific on TV that inspires you, that helps you grow, helps you to, that helps refresh you. But if you just spend all your time watching TV, all your free time, and not spending any time in lifelong learning or seeking your inspiration and taking care of your body and so forth, then TV or computer games or whatever it is that's consuming your time is one of the most destructive forces in your life. And so, how do you manage your time appropriately to where you have time to recreate, to refresh, but still use your time as effectively as possible, considering PPC considerations, P/PC. Taking care of yourself and making sure that you have the strength to keep going. So not overdoing it. And then we get to those three interaction or interpersonal habits. Seek first to understand and then be understood. To actually listen to people and ask them, what is going on, which I know is what I have to do with my son, by the way. I have to ask him why he didn't get the grades that he thought he was going to get and what he can do about it. Get him to tell me what he thinks he can do. And so as I listen to him, then at some point he's going to ask for my input. And I'll give him my ideas, some things that I think he's doing wrong, but not until I can explore how he's thinking, what his priorities are, how he spent his time, how he could do it better, asking him questions to let him think it through. Because until he thinks it through, until he can tell me what he feels, then he's not going to listen to my ideas anyway. And so I need to listen to him. Think win-win, I guess I jumped over that, but kind of, again, what is, again, I would have perhaps flipped those around, 4 and 5. But thinking win-win is very close to synergy, because if you're thinking win-win, you're thinking, how can we both win? How can we find that third option? And that third option is basically synergistic. And so that third option is part and parcel with thinking win-win. We can come up with the third option to be successful together. And then the Sharpen the Saw. Dr. Covey was about 80 years old when he died. He was riding his bicycle, trying to keep up his physical strength, and he got hit by a car. And he lingered for a few days, and his family gathered around him in the hospital, and he died there from his injuries just in 2012. I met him in 2008, so a couple of years after I had a chance to meet him. Some of these I will have you watch, but I think I will end with this one. I'll have you watch on Moodle, along with his conclusion. But I do want to maybe run this one, just a 5-minute video, kind of in memory of Dr. Covey, and he has some interesting, very powerful closing thoughts of his own as well that I wanted to share with you. So let's go ahead and end with that.